Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Attila Tombax. I am a doctor. I am from Szeged. I am 62 years old, and I am the commercial manager of a fantastic business group at NEOM. Furthermore, this business has been active in Hungary for 2 years, and for this group, from a medical perspective, I serve as a sort of consultant. When I say a sort of consultant, I mean that I am not an employee of the company. Basically, I make these short videos so that people can better and better understand just how extraordinary the company, the technology, and the product we are involved with truly are. The reason for this video is that a week ago there was a public announcement made directly by the founder and owner of the company, Steve Scott. Recently, a lot of videos of a medical and research nature have come out. It all started when a professor of molecular biology, born in Greece but living in the United States, joined NEOM's advisory boards. His name is Sotiris Nikolopoulos, and Professor Nikolopoulos was the first to tell us that, as human beings, our genetic makeup is 99.9% similar. People are born into the world with very similar genes. However, there is a huge difference. The fact that these genes are switched on or off and how active they are significantly determines how our bodies function. In the first video we received from Professor Nikolopoulos, he explained that there are certain genes which, if they are more active than average, can make a person much more likely to develop all kinds of inflammation compared to other people. And fortunately, there are also genes which, if they are more active and function better than others, actually protect us from these inflammations. So within us there are genes that promote inflammation and genes that counteract it, and the fact that it is possible to influence how these genes function is precisely his field of expertise. The final result of this series of studies was that, in a top-level molecular biology research institute in the United States, it was demonstrated that the company's product has an absolutely positive effect on the behavior of anti-inflammatory genes. The next piece of information we received from Professor Sotiris Nikolopoulos was that, after examining the composition of our product, which clearly contains a fantastic high-quality glutathione, and in fact it's not so much the quality of the glutathione that's special, but rather the way we introduce it into the body. And in addition to glutathione, cysteine is also present. So in their research, they began to observe that if you increase the level of cysteine compared to the previous formula, this significantly improves the half-life of the product called NutriSwiss. What this concretely means is that the half-life improves, that is, it increases the amount of time a lozenge I placed under my tongue remains active in my body. With this new formulation, starting from December 1st, every time a package is shipped, there is a small leaflet inside. If the leaflet explains the modified composition, then everyone can be sure that the NutriSwiss product contained in that box already has the new recipe with an increased cysteine content, which is definitely more effective than before. So this is my next piece of good news. For a little over 2 years, I've been working with this company's products, and now a change has arrived that is not just a simple restyling, but significantly improves the effectiveness of our preparation. It has become much more effective. I recommend everyone to try it. Now, the third truly special statement is the one we are incredibly excited about. Until now, we have always said that the special hydration technology, or by its full American name, even though saying it in full tends to scare everyone, namely molecular encapsulation technology, is designed to deliver the administered glutathione to the cells as easily as possible. There are two important steps to get glutathione to the cells. One is how glutathione enters the bloodstream from the oral cavity. In this aspect alone, we are already much better than most products on the market. In fact, if I take a glutathione preparation in the form of a tablet or capsule, and now I'm talking about any product from any company, when it reaches the small intestine, where it should be absorbed and from there pass through the intestinal wall to enter at least partially into the bloodstream, there is a significant loss in quantity. In the same way, there is also a loss if I try to introduce it, for example, in the form of a patch through the skin. The great idea from NEOM was for glutathione to be absorbed directly through the oral cavity, that is, under the tongue. To be honest, we weren't the ones who invented it. So, sublingual absorption is a fairly well-known technological process. The idea that it is absorbed from there, along with the gel-like consistency of the preparation we provide, well, that was the extraordinary part. So, from the oral cavity, glutathione enters the bloodstream relatively easily through the small blood vessels of the oral mucosa and the large veins under the tongue. But one could also say that if I do an IV, the active ingredient reaches the bloodstream even more effectively, because in that case there is no barrier at all. It goes directly into the blood. However, there is a next step. Once glutathione is in the bloodstream, it tends, like many other proteins, to aggregate. And even though the glutathione molecule is really tiny, about 5 nanometers in size, it's really very small. If it aggregates, it then becomes a much larger molecule that cannot easily pass through the cell membrane at all. And furthermore, if it gets that far, we end up with such a large structure, a sort of tangle of threads, that the absorption surface also becomes extensive. So let's imagine we have a big ball of yarn approaching the cell. If only two small spherical points touch, how tiny is the surface through which a large molecule tries to be absorbed? If we manage to prevent this huge mass from aggregating and instead separate these molecules one by one and try to introduce them into the cell this way, there is no doubt that the chances of them getting in are much higher. Furthermore, since we use a very special type of water to separate the glutathione molecules from each other, I could say that the glutathione does not have what you would call a packaging substance. That is, for example, if someone were to package glutathione in fat and a certain percentage of it managed to pass through the cell membrane, even if at a very low rate but still entered the cell, then that introduced fat would clearly be considered an undesirable substance inside the cell. And the fact of getting that fatty substance through a cell membrane, which is fundamentally hydrophilic, meaning it loves water, would also require a lot of energy. In our case, the highest quality glutathione, encapsulated in water, will cross the cell membrane without any energy expenditure through what is called passive diffusion and will enter immediately. I've explained this countless times in my lectures, but there are always critics who say, okay, so what's the proof of all this? The announcement from last week, an announcement was made a week ago. There is a company, one of the largest testing companies in the world. It's called Eurofins, spelled Eurofins. Eurofins conducts any kind of test, provided that the results are made public, even if they are not favorable to the commissioning company. So it's a huge risk, and only those companies that are quite confident in the quality of their product dare to turn to Eurofins for help. So Naomi sent her product to Eurofins for testing, and the question was whether they could demonstrate through measurements how effectively and how quickly this substance enters the cells. So not just into the bloodstream, but actually inside the cells. According to previous information, orally administered glutathione produced with the best possible technology first reaches the small intestine, then passes into the bloodstream, and a portion manages to enter the cells. Basically, this process takes at least 2 hours. Eurofins demonstrated that Naomi's company's product enters the cells in 5 minutes. This doesn't apply only to NutriSfish, but in this case also to Neuro. Another noteworthy point is that the absorption efficiency of tablet or capsule forms taken orally is around 20 to 30%. The liposomal form, which before the arrival of Naomi technology seemed perhaps the most effective, achieved an absorption rate of about 50%. In the case of Enozimi, studies by Eurofins have shown that over 90% enters the cell. So this is an extraordinary result both in terms of speed and effectiveness. If we tell an athlete to take those 5 milliliters before training, or for example a cyclist who is trying to complete a marathon to take a capful every half hour, then after 5 minutes it takes effect. So it has a real effect. It's not like you say, oh great, maybe I'll feel something only at the end of the game. And obviously that's information not to be overlooked, and I would definitely include it here at the end. We have all the necessary certifications regarding athletes. But basically I wanted to talk about Eurofins. And from this point on, I want you to know that there is scientific evidence showing that it is absorbed with maximum efficiency, and within 5 minutes, it's already inside the cell. Thank you very much for your attention. If this doesn't excite you, well, I am really happy, so get in touch with us. And for those who haven't started using the product yet just because they weren't sure it wasn't just a marketing phrase, you can now start with confidence. Even those who have already used it and just want one more reason to believe that it's really as amazing as we say, now have the proof. Thank you very much for your attention. By the way, Naomi will be releasing an official written statement regarding the Eurofins examination. This is a shortened and somewhat simplified version of the original medical document, which was about 60 pages long, so that ordinary people can understand it too. So it wasn't just me making a statement in front of the camera, but this will be available to everyone in a readable and tangible version. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Goodbye, everyone.